Who's a cute little plant? You're a cute little plant. Yes, you are. Oh, look at you. You're so green and you're... Oh, hi, everyone. I'm talking to my succulent. Welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm Mike, and this is Morris, my succulent. Yes, I name my plants, okay? And we're talking about succulents today, so I thought I would bring my little friend onto the show because, you know, he's a little shy. He's very, very small. But since we are talking about his whole family of plants, it only seemed natural to kind of, you know, get him out here, get him making a little guest appearance because succulents is the topic of our article for today. What are succulents? Well, we're going to be getting into that, but this is kind of a family of plants. I mean, if you think of insects, right, there are millions of kinds of insects, but we talk about flies, or we talk about beetles, or we talk about ants, or things like that. And that kind of breaks up insects into smaller types. Beetles, cockroaches, they have the hard shell. Flies, of course, can fly. Ants, they walk on the ground. They don't usually fly. So kind of in the same way, succulents is a family of plants that includes a lot of interesting plants that grow in many different parts of the world. In fact, some scientists even argue about what plant is actually a succulent. So we're going to be looking at all of this in our article. It should be very, very interesting. And I'm going to put Morris to bed, and then we'll be back to look at our article.
Question 1. What are succulents? Question 2. What are their characteristics? Question 3. How are cacti different from other succulents? Question 4. How do you care for a succulent plant? Answer 1. Succulents are plants that are especially good at storing water, typically in thick stems or leaves. This ability makes them well adapted to surviving in dry climates. There are over 60 different plant families that contain succulents. Answer 2. Succulents are identified by their thick or swollen stems or leaves. Examples include thick-stemmed cacti and fleshy-leaved aloe plants. Another special feature of succulents is that some perform photosynthesis in their stems rather than their leaves.
All right, so succulents is the topic of our conversation, and in fact, our conversation is kind of an interview. It's a Q&A on succulents. Q&A just means question and answer. So we, the people who don't know much, will be asking the questions, and hopefully scientists, botanists, who are plant scientists, will be giving us some good answers. So let's look at our 4 questions first. These are all some pretty good basic questions. Question 1, what are succulents? When we say this word, succulents, what do we mean by that? And to kind of get more information, question 2 asks, what are their characteristics? How are they different from other kinds of plant? And then even more specific, question 3, how are cacti different from other succulents? Because as I said, this family, it's really made up of many different types of plants. Cactus is one group, or cacti are one group, but they're different from other succulents like my friend Morris. And question number 4, how do you care for a succulent plant? Because these are very popular house plants. People keep them in their home, they keep them in their office too. People say they're very easy to take care of, but like with any living thing, you do have to do some basic things to keep your little succulent friend happy and healthy. Then we'll tell you all about that. First answer to the question, what exactly are succulents? It says succulents are plants that are especially good at storing water, typically in thick stems or leaves. This ability makes them well adapted to surviving in dry climates. Yeah. Cacti, of course, are famous for living in deserts, and succulents are also known to live in people's offices even when they sit on the desk all weekend with no one watering them. It's not a problem for a succulent. They don't need to be watered every day. In fact, that's not good for them. They are adapted to survive in dry climates or places with very little rain. There are over 60 different plant families that contain succulents. So even though succulents is a smaller group In the plant world, there are other smaller groups in the world of succulents too. And as we know, between cacti and other ones, they're quite different. When we talk about surviving, this verb to survive basically means to live through a dangerous, life-threatening experience or event. If you're in a crash, if you get a serious disease, if you live through a fire or something like that and you don't die, you successfully stay alive, well done, you survived. So to survive is to not die in a situation where you could die. For example, the lost hikers will need to find water and food to survive. Yes, you can survive without food for a couple of weeks, but if you try to survive without water for more than 2 or 3 days, it's going to be hard. We need water to live. Back to the article. Let's look at answer number 2. All right, so now we're talking about what are the characteristics of succulents. It says succulents are identified by their thick or swollen stems or leaves. Well, yeah, when you think about a leaf on a tree or a leaf on a normal plant, it's pretty thin, right? I mean, it's almost a little bit, maybe a little bit thicker than a piece of paper, but it's not swollen. It's not thick like your hand or something, but succulent leaves often are. They're often quite thick like your hand, much thicker than a typical leaf on a tree or plant. And also, as they get rain, these leaves will change size. They will get bigger. They will swell. When something swells, it gets bigger, usually because some kind of liquid or something is under the surface and it's blowing it up. Kind of like a balloon. You can think that a balloon swells as you blow air into it, but also we often use this word when talking about if you hurt a part of your body and a few minutes later it gets bigger, like if you fall or you bend your wrist, then the blood will go in there, right? And it'll get really big and it will swell and it will hurt. So that is to swell, to get bigger from the inside. For example, Brian's eye is swollen because he got hit with a golf ball. Ooh, yeah, if you get hit in the eye, you get that black eye, your eye gets all puffy. When we talk about it getting puffy, we're saying it is swelling. Okay, so let's look at some of these good examples, these well-known examples of succulents. Examples include thick-stemmed cacti and fleshy-leaved aloe plants. Yeah, it's true, the aloe plant that we use for that aloe vera stuff that's good for your skin, that's a succulent. And also the big cactus with the spikes that we see in deserts or we see in cowboy movies or something like that, that's also a type of succulent. Another special feature of succulents is that some perform photosynthesis in their stems rather than their leaves. That is pretty unusual. Photosynthesis, of course, is when plants turn light into energy. They feed off the light that falls on their leaves, but that's why plants have those big flat leaves, right? They move towards the sun, they kind of face the sun, they pick up the rays from the sun, and they use that to stay alive. Well, succulents are doing this, but not with the leaves, with the stems. On a normal tree, that's what holds the leaf onto the tree. It's the leaf that's doing the work. The stem is just the connection. But with succulents, it's the stem that's performing this important task. To perform is to do something, often something important, often something where you might practice or train. If you are a worker, your job is to perform your duties. If you're an artist of some kind, a dancer, singer, musician, you will perform in front of people. You will do your job, do your actions, probably planned and rehearsed and practiced, but that is what you are doing. You are doing a set of sort of organized actions. For example, besides making lesson plans, teachers perform the task of checking homework. We could also say teachers do the task of checking homework. Let's take a break, and then we'll be back with more about fabulous little succulents.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。今天的课文标题是 Q&A on Succulents 多肉植物问答集。 那么 succulent 就是指多肉植物。Mike 老师则提到 botanist，botanist 这个名词呢，表示植物学家的意思。好，那我们就来看看关于多肉植物的4个问题以及它们的答案。首先，第一个问题是多肉植物是什么呢？多肉植物啊，是特别擅长储存水分的植物，这种能力呢，使它们很能适应在干燥的气候中生存。再第二个问题是，它们的特色是什么呢？多肉植物啊，可以透过它粗厚或是肿胀的茎或叶来辨别。那另外一个特点则是，有些多肉植物在茎部进行光合作用，而不是在叶子的部分。好，我们来看单字 survive， 它是动词，有存活、生存、幸存的意思。那么 swell 表示肿胀或是使什么膨胀，文中是用它的过去分词 swollen 来当形容词，形容肿胀的。Mike 老师则用到 puffy。Puffy 可以形容鼓鼓胀胀的或是浮肿的。下一个单字 perform 是动词，它有做啊、执行或者是演出表演那种意思。那这边2个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，我们来看这个重点是 make 加受词加受词补语，它是表达使成为怎么样，变成怎么样。那么 make 在这边呢，它是表达使成为、使变成。受词补语我们可以用名词或形容词。那我们来造2个例句。The news made everyone happy。那个消息让大家都很开心。还有像我们可以说 The film made him an A-list superstar。那部电影使他成为 A 咖巨星。好，再来看到下个重点是 adapted， 它是形容适应的、适合什么的。那么之后可以用 to 或是 for 去接名词或动名词。举例来说 The plant is well adapted to a warm and humid environment。这种植物呢，很能适应于温暖潮湿的环境。那我们直接回到课文中。
Answer 3. Cacti are different from other succulents because they generally have few or no leaves. Also, they are the only plants that grow small bumps called areoles. The areoles are where the cacti's distinctive spines grow from. Answer 4. As a general rule, succulents need at least 6 hours of sunlight a day and should be watered only when the soil has dried out completely. During the fall and winter months, succulents are dormant, so they need less water than in the spring and summer. Although succulents need water to survive, too much can lead to root rot. Therefore, succulents do best with soil and pots that drain well. And as with all plants, fertilizer and proper pest control methods should be used.
Okay, we are back with our 3rd question. As you can see here, let's talk about cacti. We know that this is a smaller family, a smaller group in the succulent family, but exactly how are cacti different from the other family members? Well, it says cacti are different from other succulents because they generally have few or no leaves. Yeah, it's true. I think actually when you call the leaf on a cactus, maybe it could be that pointy thing, or it could also be something you can't even see. You don't even know it's a leaf because it's so tiny. It says also they are the only plants that grow small bumps called areoles. That's a little unusual. A little bump on your plant. You might think that the plant is sick or something like that. It has some disease. But no, that's exactly what cacti have. And these areoles, they actually perform a very important function because the areoles are where the cacti's distinctive spines grow from. Those spines, those spikes, those things that go ouch if you touch them with your finger or get them in your skin. That is something very unique and unusual and painful about cacti, but also what make them such interesting and in many cases beautiful plants. Okay, and our 4th question for anyone out there who wants to maybe adopt a succulent, maybe bring one into your home and have it as a plant. It says, as a general rule, succulents need at least 6 hours of sunlight a day and should be watered only when the soil has dried out completely. Yeah, not all succulents live in dry parts of the world, but many of them do, right? Cacti, for example. So that's kind of a good thing to remember when taking care of a succulent. This is a desert plant, so it needs a lot of sun, but it probably doesn't need a lot of water. Another thing, though, that makes them very useful or very convenient for people to take care of. And then as the weather changes and as the year goes on, we also learn this interesting thing. During the fall and winter months, succulents are dormant. In other words, they kind of go to sleep. So they need less water than in the spring and summer. Interesting. So as the seasons change and we get to the colder part of the year, your succulent will need less water because that is the natural thing that happens to it outside in the wild. Although succulents need water to survive, too much can lead to root rot. Yeah, remember, these are plants that grow in dry places in very sandy soil where the water runs through. There's a little bit of water and it runs through very quickly. So you do not want to have your succulent sitting there in water. This is not a swamp plant. This is not a jungle plant. This is a dry desert plant. So too much water might lead to rot. Now here we can see that rot is being used as a noun. We can also use this as a verb. Basically, when something rots, it gets old and it breaks down and it becomes kind of disgusting. Usually rot is caused by something dying and being wet in some kind of way, so then it breaks down, it starts to smell. We think of, bad fruit, we think of old vegetables, we think of bodies that might rot. If you put somewhere in a place where it's very dry, it could actually dry before it rots. That means the water leaves and you get a dried tomato or a dried piece of fruit or an Egyptian mummy or something like that. They are dried out to kind of stay in a nice condition. But if it stays wet, if you stick it under the ground or leave it outside where it rains, things will rot and they will break down, they will become very disgusting and smelly. And of course, rot for plants is going to kill them eventually. For example, the rot spread quickly and the old house became unsafe for people to live in. Probably the wood in the walls got wet, stayed wet, it starts to break down, and of course that can make the house very dangerous. Therefore, back to the article, succulents do best with soil and pots that drain well. Remember, you're creating a little desert in your pot, so think of it that way. And as with all plants, fertilizer and proper pest control methods should be used. Yeah, generally when we're growing plants inside, they don't get everything they would outside, so we want to take care of them extra carefully. Things like fertilizer, plant food will definitely help. And remember that the little pot that your succulent is in needs to drain very well and probably drain quite quickly. When something drains, that means the water leaves it in sort of a controlled way, usually from the bottom. We're using it as a verb here, but we can also use it as a noun. For example, the pool won't drain, so we'll have to call someone to fix it. Probably a lot of dead leaves are stuck there, stopping it from draining properly. Let's move to our what do you think question. What is the easiest plant to take care of and why? I have a great answer for this one. Plastic plants are the easiest to take care of because they're plastic. They're not alive. You don't even have to water them. You dust them occasionally. That's a good answer, but they're sad plants. How about this one? The ficus, F-I-C-U-S, is easy to take care of. And I know that because I see them in lots of office buildings and dentists' offices and places like that. A little bit harder than a succulent, but still a hard plant to kill. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We hope you enjoyed our time with succulents. We encourage you to take up succulent gardening, and we'll see you back here soon. Bye!
好，来看第三个问题是：仙人掌跟其他多肉植物有什么不同呢？仙人掌的叶子通常很少或是没有，而且它们是唯一会长出刺座，就是那种小凸块的植物。那么刺座是仙人掌长刺的地方。 Mike 老师这时候用到 spike 这个字 ，S-P-I-K-E spike 当名词，它可以指尖刺、刺状物。好，再看到第4个问题是说，你要如何照顾多肉植物呢？那一般来说，多肉植物一天至少需要6个小时的日照，只有在土壤完全干掉时才要浇水。那秋冬月份需要的水分会比春夏还少。那么虽然多肉植物需要水才能存活，太多水可能会导致它的根部烂掉哦，所以你最好要使用排水良好的土壤和花盆。好，来看单字 rot， 它可以当名词或动词，表达腐烂、腐败。那么 drain 这个动词，它有排出或者是使什么流出、流干的意思。老师提醒大家说，多肉植物可不是湿地植物，不能给它太多水。老师说的 swamp S-W-A-M-P。Swamp 表示沼泽地或者是湿地。那老师最后还推荐了 ficus， 就是榕属植物。有一些适合养在室内的榕属植物，其实还算蛮容易照顾的。同学们不妨上网查查资料哦。这边一个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，我们来学习比较数量的用法。比较数量的时候呢，可以用形容词比较级来修饰名词。那么这时候句型是 more 或是 less 加上不可数名词加上 than 什么什么，或是用 more 或 fewer 去加可数名词再加 than 什么什么。举例来说 ，Tim has more toy cars than his brother. Tim 拥有的玩具车比他弟弟多。Children need more sleep than adults. 儿童需要的睡眠比成人还多。好，那么以上这些讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
Question 1. What are succulents? Question 2. What are their characteristics? Question 3. How are cacti different from other succulents? Question 4. How do you care for a succulent plant? Answer 1. Succulents are plants that are especially good at storing water, typically in thick stems or leaves. This ability makes them well adapted to surviving in dry climates. There are over 60 different plant families that contain succulents. Answer 2. Succulents are identified by their thick or swollen stems or leaves. Examples include thick-stemmed cacti and fleshy-leaved aloe plants. Another special feature of succulents is that some perform photosynthesis in their stems rather than their leaves. Answer 3. Cacti are different from other succulents because they generally have few or no leaves. Also, they are the only plants that grow small bumps called areoles. The areoles are where the cacti's distinctive spines grow from. Answer 4. As a general rule, succulents need at least 6 hours of sunlight a day and should be watered only when the soil has dried out completely. During the fall and winter months, succulents are dormant, so they need less water than in the spring and summer. Although succulents need water to survive, too much can lead to root rot. Therefore, succulents do best with soil and pots that drain well. And as with all plants, fertilizer and proper pest control methods should be used.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen.
I'm Vivian.
We're going to play a game called Word Drop. Each of us has 3 words or phrases on these cards. We haven't looked at them yet, so we don't know what they are, but we're trying to work them into a conversation as casually as possible. So I will start the conversation.
Okay.
I have so much power. All right. So as you get older, it is a lot easier to have accidents happen. And as much as you try to prevent these things from happening, your bones get weaker, your muscles get weaker, you get more tired, and you get more clumsy. This is a truth, so it's a warning for all the young people watching this video right now. So it happened to me, just like last week. I was walking and then randomly, just because the ground was not even, I tripped. And immediately my ankles started to swell.
That's really sad. I'm sorry that happened to you.
It's okay.
I definitely feel you. Over the years, I feel like my back is starting to ache a little bit more. My knee hurts a little bit. But I feel like it's very important to have a healthy, balanced diet, to exercise often, to take your vitamins in order to survive.
Yeah, that is important. And not just to survive. Sometimes you have to like work and do things when you have like an injury. Like when I had that swollen ankle, I still had to work. Okay, I still had to do things just like every other day, but then I'm just walking around like limping like that. And I actually once had to go on stage and perform with a swollen ankle. It was pretty bad.
Wow.
It was an awkward performance.
I feel like that is really difficult. I can't imagine having to perform on an injury. That must have been so difficult. In other news, I was cleaning out my fridge as an adult, and I was away for a couple of weeks, and I totally forgot a couple of fruit that was in my fridge. And like an adult, I had to scrub away the rot from my fridge, and it was not pleasant.
Yeah, that's not pleasant.
Very adult.
All like when you go home and you find stuff like that, you're like, oh, I thought I was already old enough to know not to do that, but I guess I'm not. And things like that make me really frustrated. Like, oh, I should have known, but I didn't.
I know.
How could I have forgotten?
I was pretty mad at myself as well, and I feel like
as you get older, we do have bad memories, so that's why.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, I felt like I spent so much time trying to tidy up the apartment, and I was doing, all the cleaning, and I was just so drained from all of that work.
I know, because you're older.
I know.
That's what it is. It's
No
getting
energy.
older.
No energy.
Don't get old.
See you next time!